Today's dating culture has created a reality where men who express genuine interest are seen as liabilities instead of leaders. It's no longer enough to be kind, consistent, and communicative. Those traits are now labeled as weaknesses. A simple, "good morning" text, meant to make her smile, becomes a mark of desperation. If you check in too often, you're seen as clingy. If you speak openly about your feelings, you're too much. The tragedy is that what once created connection, honest, daily communication, is now misread as a red flag. She's not asking herself, "What is he saying?" She's thinking, "Why is he saying it?" In her mind, if you're showing up without games, if you're emotionally present without making her work for it, then you must not be valuable. Because she believes a high-value man wouldn't have time to be available. And so, your consistency becomes the evidence she uses against you. You're not unpredictable enough. You don't keep her wondering. You don't disappear long enough to make her obsess. And in this strange reversal, the man who gives the most is discarded the fastest. So you start holding back. You stop saying what you feel. You begin to calculate your replies, shorten your messages, and delay your responses. Not because it's your nature, but because you're trying to survive the psychological minefield. And yet, the more you suppress your nature, the less you recognize yourself. You're not trying to manipulate her. You're trying not to lose her. But in doing so, you lose you. The truth is, you're not being too much. She's just not emotionally calibrated to receive the kind of man who doesn't need drama to feel important. And if she can't handle clarity, connection, or calmness, she's not the one confused. You are confused into thinking your value is in your silence. Asterisk, this pattern of rejection doesn't just sting in the moment, it begins to rewire your instincts. You start internalizing the idea that openness is a liability, that communication is something to be rationed, not offered freely. You begin second-guessing everything: how fast you reply, how often you reach out, even how much emotion you allow yourself to show. You're not evolving, you're adapting. Adapting to a world where the more real you are, the more you're ignored. It's not that you've become less honest, it's that you've been taught that honesty is dangerous. So you trade authenticity. For safety, you shrink yourself to avoid rejection. And what starts as self-protection quickly morphs into self-abandonment. You stop asking questions not because you don't care, but because you've learned that curiosity makes you look desperate. You silence your own voice, not because you lack something to say, but because you've learned that silence creates more attraction than truth. You become the cool, collected version of yourself, not because it's who you are, but because it's who you think she wants. You play it safe. You keep it surface. You match her emotional distance, not realizing that in doing so, you're burying your own capacity for depth. You're not protecting your peace, you're numbing your pain. And slowly, the mask you put on becomes your reality. You're performing emotional minimalism just to keep her attention, while inside, you're starving for real connection. This is the slow erosion of self-worth. You begin to believe that the less you speak, the more you're desired. But that desire is hollow, built on performance, not presence. You're no longer a man sharing his truth, you're a character auditioning for approval. And over time, the cost isn't just emotionally spiritual. You lose touch with your center. You forget that love isn't supposed to punish presence, asterisk, and while you're busy doubting yourself, questioning your openness, and adjusting your energy to seem more detached, you start noticing something disturbing. The men who don't care, who don't try, who don't communicate, those are the ones being worshipped. The man who doesn't text back for 6 hours gets a flood of messages. The man who replies with a cold K after she pours out her feelings becomes the object of obsession. Why? Because his indifference creates a void. And in that void, she builds stories. She projects. She wonders. She imagines. And that uncertainty keeps her chasing. It's not love she's feeling, it's addiction to the unknown. It's the lack of clarity that makes her feel invested. And while you were trying to build something real, she's over here assigning emotional weight to a man who can't even complete a sentence. That's when it hits you. You're not losing to better. Manure losing 2 more emotionally unavailable ones. Not because they're more attractive or more intelligent, but because they withhold. Their silence is seen as strength. Their disinterest is read as confidence. And that's the lie many women have bought into, confusing emotional scarcity for value. So what do? You feel the pull? You think maybe I should care less? Maybe I should stop trying? And before you know it, you're mimicking what works. Not because it feels good, but because it feels necessary. You begin showing less, replying slower, expressing less, hoping to create the same intrigue. But now you're caught in a loop, a game that betrays your nature. You're no longer showing up from wholeness. You're showing up from strategy. And the truth is, the moment you start playing that game, you've already lost. You can't win it, but because in playing it, you're becoming a version of yourself you don't respect. Asterisk, then comes the shift, subtle at first, but undeniable. You start realizing that playing small doesn't preserve your worth, it erodes it. You begin to see that withholding your truth to keep someone around doesn't build connection, delays rejection. So instead of chasing, you start observing. You stop interpreting breadcrumbs as affection. You stop confusing delayed replies with mystery. Begin studying her energy the way you used to study your own messages before sending them. Does she meet you where you stand, or does she pull back when you're sincere? Does she lean in when you show up, or does she ghost the moment you reveal your depth? These aren't moments of insecurity, they're moments of awakening. You start to realize your words carry weight, and that weight deserves a solid place to land. If she can't receive them with presence, then she's not meant to hold your emotional truth. And that realization doesn't make you bitter, it makes you disciplined. You no longer speak to be liked, you speak to be clear. Express, not to win her over, but to honor yourself. You're no longer afraid of silence because now your silence is chosen, not forced. That's the real masculine edge, not being mute out of fear, but being selective out of power. You stop performing. You stop strategizing. You just speak when it matters and walk away when it doesn't land. You're not trying to be mysterious anymore. You're being intentional. And the more intentional you become, the more peaceful your energy gets. You protect your voice like currency and only invest in those who match your clarity. It's not because you're cold, but because you've learned your presence is a privilege, not a performance. When you start moving like that, you don't lose women, you filter them. And the ones who remain, they're the ones who are ready. Asterisk, eventually, you stop needing validation from conversations that never deepen. Stop measuring your worth by how quickly she replies or how often she initiates. You no longer feel the need to explain your intentions, justify your presence, or apologize for being expressive. You start speaking with clarity, not to impress, but to reveal who you are. And if that truth is too much for her, you don't shrink you. Stand firm, because the man who respects himself doesn't beg to be heard. He listens to her response, and if it lacks depth, effort, or reciprocity, he walks away without drama. It's not in anger, but in certainty. You realize that you're not here to audition for a woman's attention. You're not here to convince someone. That communication isn't a weakness. The right woman already knows that. She won't mock your consistency. She won't punish your vulnerability. She won't vanish the moment you show up emotionally. She'll lean in, not retreat. She'll ask questions, not dodge them. She'll create space for your voice to be heard, not silence you with emotional games. And until she arrives, you guard your peace. You let your silence be a standard, not a weapon. You stop sending messages just to see if she'll bite. You stop reaching out just to fill the void. Because now, your communication is intentional. And that intention makes it rare. The men who win in this game aren't the ones who chase, they're the ones who choose. They choose who receives their time, their effort, their emotional availability. And when you embrace that, everything shifts. You stop needing her to respond a certain way. You stop fearing rejection. Stop giving more than what's matched. You realize your voice isn't a burden, it's a filter. And when spoken from truth, it naturally repels the wrong woman and attracts the one who's ready to rise with you.